Welcome to Paradigm Shifts, new thinking about our changing times with your host, Harriette M. Steinberg, practicing matrimonial and family law, real estate, trust and estates, and elder law. You can watch episodes on YouTube and listen through Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and more. For prior episodes, go to www.lawyersonli.com. Now here's the host of Paradigm Shifts, Harriette Steinberg.
Hi, I'm Harriette Steinberg, also known as the Divorce Sherpa to some, and welcome to Paradigm Shifts. I'm here today with a colleague, Teresa Ombres, who is truly an authentic matrimonial practitioner. I can't wait to get to talk to Teresa about our paradigm shifts in the world of matrimonial practice. But in the meantime, let me introduce Teresa to everyone and say, welcome, Teresa. Thanks for coming, and tell us a little bit about who you are.
Okay. Thank you, Harriette. I'm really happy to be here with you. So I have been practicing law, or admitted to practice law, for a long, long time, say 1981. I always wanted to do matrimonial law, and that's what I started doing. And I did it for about 4 or 5 years in the 80s, and I didn't love it. It was very different then. Lawyers were not collegial. They were not transparent. Everything was a fight. And at the end of every day, I was sick to my stomach. And I didn't practice law for some years. I came back when I learned about mediation. And I learned about mediation because my daughter's high school had a peer mediation group that did a demonstration for the Parents Association. And I went, oh my God, I'm a mediator. Like, that's what I am. And that's an incredible paradigm shift in the way the law is practiced, or in the way you help people get a divorce. So I, at first, stay in a basement the rest of my life and never go to a big, scary courtroom. And then I thought, but these skills are so helpful. Why don't we bring them out to the world? And I think the biggest paradigm shift initially is how we are with our clients. I can tell you a little bit more about that.
Yes, yeah. So I'd love for we can start there, because I think that's going to lead us into many more areas. But yeah, let's talk about that for a moment.
And so the sort of on-the-job training that I had before I left the practice for a while as a litigator was, here's the law, here's your client, get the client the best deal that you can, fight for everything that you want the client to get. And it wasn't, basically we would hear from the client would give you, of course, the best case scenario that they could ever have, whether it was achievable or legal or any of that didn't really matter. That's what they wanted. And we kind of just didn't even question that. It was like, okay, we're going to get on this train and we're going to, run to the court and do what we have to do.
And Teresa, in many cases, when you describe those early days, I sort of recall that it wasn't even as much what the clients wanted. It was what we thought they should have.
Well, that's true. That's very true. In fact, I went, in my memory of it, again, mostly male lawyers at the time, the way they treated their female clients in particular was sort of like, don't worry, honey, I'll wake you up when it's all over.
Right. And
I know what you want.
Yeah, I'm going to take care of you. We're going to get the best possible situation.
That's very true. That's very true. That's very true. And so there was no conversation with the client about how do you want to remember this time in your life? How would you like your children to remember this time in your life? What would you like the outcome to look like? how about, are you going, what's the parenting plan going to look like? In those days it was pretty much an every other weekend and maybe a dinner during the week for dads. And that's been a big shift on that, in that. And not really a conversation about how are you going to get along with your children's father or mother after the divorce. None of that was ever discussed.
And now, today, after our paradigm shift.
Yeah. It really, I really like to ask that question. How do you want your children to remember this time in their lives? I think that is really powerful. I think even somebody who may be emotional and angry at the beginning of a divorce, if they really think about that, is going to know that they don't want it to be hurtful and damaging to their kids. But nobody never asked that question in the old paradigm.
Right.
And so I think that's really important. And in mediation, when I'm working with both parents to try to figure out what the parenting is going to look like, what the support's going to look like, what the division of assets is going to look like, we do like to talk about those values in the beginning. And when they start to go off course or off the rails, it kind of bring them back to remind them what you're trying to achieve here. And that's just so fundamentally different. I mean, the other thing that's so fundamentally different is from day one, we're trying to help them resolve everything.
And really to put them in the decision maker roles.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
Which sometimes I would expect, Teresa. Do you find that some of your clients might not be used to being in that position?
Yes.
And so how do we navigate that, or how would you navigate that? Right?
I guess the other shift that's so big from what I described to now is we want our clients to become empowered. And when we see or understand or observe in a mediation or in any kind of setting, a four-way or a collaborative setting, where one of the spouses just seems less able to make decisions in one area, and it could be that that it's different in in another area. One might be stronger in parenting and the other might be stronger in finances. To take the time to help everybody understand what's going on, ask questions, and along the way, I can't even say it's a switch that gets thrown, but along the way, at some point, you see that person start to become more empowered. And it starts with providing the information, understanding the information. If it's about parenting, what different parenting might look like, how one parent who maybe wasn't so involved in decision making before because everyone was in the house together and the other parent did it and that one heard it and it just got done. Now, first of all, has to make the time. They both parents have to make the time to see their kids because they can't be with them all of the time. So they're kind of splitting up that time. And also to be more involved. And that can start to make them feel a little more relaxed about having that role and being in that role and beginning to be able to feel more comfortable doing it and making decisions about it.
So essentially, the process that you're describing is really almost developing new as part of the divorce, which really is an ending of the marriage relationship. We're also creating new roles for the parties in their future lives together. The marriage is ending, but the parenting of children really evolves into could be a very different picture
Mhm. Yeah.
from how the parents had come to us in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Another place where we see, maybe one parent having a little difficulty making decisions would be in the finances. And again, you want to make sure, first of all, take the time to go slow and make sure they're understanding, what's happening. I happen to be good at math, and I can start to talk to that spouse that's good at math easily and quickly, and leave the other one out. And I've trial by error. I've learned, that's that's not a good way, and so I'm really conscious about that. And it's I may caucus in a mediation, which means talk to that parent separately. And sometimes, they're a lot more comfortable speaking separately. And then
right,
we talk about how to bring that back in the room.
right.
How can we talk about this when we're in the room? And that's very helpful. If it's about finances, I may suggest that they sit with an accountant or a financial specialist who can give them sort of a tutorial, or even consult with an attorney. And it's great. It's great to watch people become empowered. I have a case right now, a mediation where the dynamic was as you described. One spouse generally made most of the decisions. I hear some interference there.
Oh,
Um, Anyways, and the mediation was going along, kind of easy. They'd talk about things, and they'd sort of like, okay, that sounds fine. And in the attorney review process, she kind of, learned a little bit more, and was able to talk to her lawyer, and understand more, and come back and say some of these things are not good. And even then, she would still kind of tend to want to get along or agree, but she knew that she would regret it, and she really wanted something else. And it was just wonderful to watch that happen.
which obviously was a result of her feeling comfortable in the process
Mm-hmm,
and evolving herself,
mm-hmm,
correct?
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Yeah. So essentially, I think we both have learned is over all of these years of our practices, matrimonial practice really has had a very, for us, and for those of us who are mediators and work in the collaborative divorce process, we're sort of practicing a whole different concept
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
of divorce.
mm-hmm.
And
I'll tell you, based on what you said too, just thinking about that, the other part that I liked, because I do believe that mediation is in my nature, was that I don't have to solve the problem for them. I don't know the answers for them. And I like that. Here's the information. Let's talk about it. Here's all we need to figure out, and let them do it, because it's their lives. Um,
and
and I
and yeah, but you know what I think you would agree, what sometimes there is resistance to that shifting, you
Mm-hmm,
know.
mm-hmm.
Clients will come in and I think initially present with the expectation that you are going to tell them what they need or
Right,
what they should have
right,
or what is fair. How
right,
about the word fair?
right.
Yeah. We encounter it all the time. And changing that definition or just changing the language so we can teach our clients that fair really isn't the right word.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's more about what is going to work in their situation.
Mm-hmm.
And it's someone else that arrangement might not look, quote, fair,
Mm-hmm.
uh, but it works for them.
Right. Right. And lots of times that what is fair for them also is aligned with what they've done before. How, maybe how they've treated finances, maybe that's probably the easiest one, but to think of. And sometimes we have couples who say, throughout our marriage, we had separate accounts, we kept
Right.
everything separate. We want it to be that way in our divorce. And that's not what the law might do necessarily.
Yeah.
Another thing that I've been thinking a lot lately, sometimes when cases are a little more contentious, not even when they're more contentious, even when they're very amicable, when one spouse says, "I'm entitled,"
Ah,
it feels disempowering for that spouse. It's because they're feeling like, all right, I don't have this, but I think I'm supposed to have this. And I sort of feel like I need to fight for it because the law says I'm supposed to have it. And if we're talking about splitting up marital property or a retirement account, for instance. And we'll also say something like, I hate taking from him or her. And I try to really help. This was a paradigm shift. The law of equitable distribution, which only became the law in 1980 in the state of New York, the legislature was really clear to say equitable, not equal, and really clear to say whatever you accumulate during your marriage is marital property. Title doesn't matter. And so if one of you has a big retirement account and the other one has a big bank account, it's all marital property. You're not taking from each other. You're splitting up the marital property. And I'm trying to find ways to not use that word entitled because it's a trigger. It makes the one saying it feel disempowered. It makes the one hearing it feeling like, well, why do I have to give mine? And I
right.
think
And
really I think that's a real shift. If people could really grab onto that, I think that really changes how it feels when they're talking about
the sensitivity to words and ideas in the work we do is from for me, and I know
it.
for you and our other colleagues, such a paradigm shift. We have to really think about how we're presenting the ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And in certain families, there are triggers, as you say, and finding out what they are. That's one of the reasons why I really love collaborative practice, because we can bring in the disciplines, the family coach
Mm-hmm.
who has special antennas, as I say, to those issues and can help the whole team sort of bring the couple along the path.
Mm-hmm.
But so tell me, do you see the practice of mediation and matrimonial collaborative, process emerging from the back roads anytime soon, or I would think that it has emerged, but I'd like to hear what you have to say.
I think it has emerged, and because I think the clients have learned about it. And I'm finding lately, even if they haven't done their own research on the internet, which many, many people do, people who didn't know better, who went to separate lawyers and didn't like what they heard. They were told to make things worse, and knew that's not what they wanted to do, and maybe knew someone who did mediate or have a collaborative process. and understand that kept them out of court, and it made generally for a shorter, less costly process, want to do it. They're I think it's the clients who are driving this bus.
Great.
Yeah. And I think the more they can know about it or hear about it or learn about it, the better. So I think something like this podcast, if it gets into the hands of a potential client, is going to be helpful. There really can be a good divorce.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to hurt the kids. It's going to disrupt everybody for a while, but it doesn't have to have long-term damage.
Exactly. So before we go, I have one other question I'd like to ask, because I know that you do teach
Yes.
at the law schools, at Hofstra Law now, yes?
Yes.
And how are this younger lawyers receiving the idea of a non-litigational approach? What's their reaction?
It's really interesting when they get to my course, it's called officially the Family Law Practicum, and it is a mediation, not necessarily a clinic, but it's a 6-credit course. They spend time with me in my mediations, and we spend 2 hours a week in class, and I co-teach with a psychologist, Professor Paul Meller. He's been at Hofstra for a long time. And that is such a rich experience. But I would say, so the students, to get to that class, have to have some family law classes in their background. And many times they're third year, 3 Ls. We usually have 1 or 2 Ls. But for the most part, they've learned about nothing but litigation for 2 or 3 years. And they come in, and talk about a paradigm shift. It's astonishing to them. And many of them really like it. And they are going to practice this way in this field. The other thing that you see is a lot of them have had divorces in their lives. And I have one student right now, her parents separated when she was 5. She said they've been the most amicable people. She never suffered a day for it. Yeah. And she comes with that sensibility, and it's great. And then you have others who come with other trauma that's happened, and they don't want that. They want to help people not have that experience.
Right. Well, I'm thrilled to have you speak about your experience, your teaching, your practice, and I look forward to spreading the word. As a divorce Sherpa, I certainly am committed to this approach, because it really does make the most sense for families. So thank you so much, Teresa, for sharing your wisdom with us today.
Thank you, Harriet. Thanks for bringing me on. This was really nice.
Okay, bye now.
Thank you for listening to Paradigm Shifts, new thinking about our changing times, with your host, Harriette M. Steinberg, practicing matrimonial and family law, real estate, trust and estates, and elder law. You can watch episodes on YouTube and listen to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and more. For prior episodes, go to www.lawyersonli.com.